Hi everybody, KGB313 here, and I'm excited to bring you this video today. We're going to be talking about retro gaming, how we can play these devices on modern displays with minimal input lag, and also how we can capture these for streaming. In my case, using a modern capture card like the Elgato. There are a few different ways of doing this. I'm going to explain the way that I do it. I do everything through my streaming setup. And what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to capture these games for streaming, but I also want to be able to play them with my input lag minimized as much as possible so I can get the most out of some of these old games. Anybody that's played Mike Tyson's Punch-Out or that has played Ninja Gaiden on the NES, for example, can tell you timing can be everything in these games, and just a little bit of input lag can really mess you up. So let's get into it. What I'm going to do, I'm going to show you based on an old school game console here. We're going to use the Atari 2600. And this is a very old console. It's hard to capture, and it's one of the harder ones to capture. And so I think if you understand how I'm setting this one up, all the other ones are a lot easier to understand how to hook them up. So what makes the Atari so hard to deal with? Well, this bad boy right here. And congratulations, if you recognize this, you're old, because so am I. For you kids that don't know what this is a converter box. The old thick CRT TVs you've seen, they used to actually use antenna to get the signal from the airwaves. And that signal would go through the antenna, down through a couple wires that had U-shaped prongs on them. They would screw into the back of the TV. Well, see, this converter has a couple screws on it too. Take the prongs from your antenna, you screw them on here, and then the signal from the antenna can go through this device, through these wires. You can see there's U-shaped prongs here that are attaching it to this adapter here. It's an adapter to make this usable with coaxial inputs like you find on TVs and devices from the 90s and the 2000s. But the other side of this has a single RCA input. So you put your RCA, and that is going to take your audio and your video all in one from the game console into this box, and then down through the wires and to the TV. The switcher just tells you, give me the signal from the game console or give me the signal from the antenna. Okay? Not a bad solution, but obviously these are old, these are clunky. Every different connection is a possibility to have the signal degrade. So we're going to do something different. And what we're going to do with this instead, this is a cheap and easy solution. You can find these on Amazon for about $5. They allow you to do that coax to the single RCA, but in a much simpler way. If it's getting a signal from the game console, it's not going to take it from the TV. It's going to override that antenna. So let me show you how this is done using my old 1987 Atari Junior. You can see there is the single RCA out of the back. And in this case, we're going to use a VCR DVD combo from LG. Still works great, but it's got a coax input is the important thing. Now you can see from up there, this also has an HDMI output. We're going to use the RCA output. So you can see we screw that into the coax, and now we can just plug the cable in, nice and easy. And with this, we have an output that we can do the yellow, white, red. The yellow is video, the white and the red are left, right, audio. So it converts the signal from one splits it out into those three separate ones. You can do that with a converter, but those converters are around 80, 90 bucks, I think, when I most recently priced one. And you can get an old VCR for that, or probably much less. So even if it doesn't have functionality, it works to be able to convert the signal. So why not do the HDMI output? Wondering. Well, the issue is upscaling. These old game consoles were built for old TVs. Old TVs had resolution in like the 240 range in some cases. Really, really low compared to modern TVs doing 1080p, right? Or even the 4K TV. If you're trying to display the image at a higher resolution than its native resolution, it has to be converted. So if you want to play one of these on a 1080p TV, it's got to upconvert it from the native resolution to whatever your display is, right? So if you do that in the monitor, or you do that in the TV, it's going to do that conversion, and it's going to take more time. Okay? That is where you get the possibility of introducing input lag. So what you're going to want, and again, these are pretty inexpensive. I want to say 20, 30 bucks. This is an upscaler. And what this is going to let me do is take the signal from that RCA input, and it's going to turn it into HDMI output. You can see I can choose between 720 or 10 output. What that's going to do is it's going to upscale that signal all in one step, all in this one device. It goes from native resolution in to HDMI 1080p out. And if all you want to do is play on a TV, this go into your TV and you're good to go, right? But what if you're like me, you still want to play, you still want to have like input be crisp and everything, but you want to be able to capture this and all your other consoles? Well, we're going to go to another step. That is an HDMI switcher. Okay, so we've got all these old school consoles are going through one HDMI. But if you're like me, I've got a PS4, I've got an Xbox 360, I've got a PS3 down here. Okay? So I'm putting all those different ones. I've got, you know, my NES Mini, I've got my Super NES Mini. I've got a lot of HDMI consoles too. So we want to get all of those. And so this switcher allows me, I can swap between the different inputs. And if you watch here, right at the end, you'll see like a little nub, which is, that is our infrared. And you'll see a remote next to it. With that remote, I can go ahead and press a button. And as soon as the software catches up, now I'm looking at my NES Mini. Or I can do the same thing. And now I'm looking at my PS4. Okay, so nice and easy. I can get all my other consoles in there, all my HDMI stuff. That's great. And again, pretty inexpensive, maybe like 30 bucks, I think, for one of those. And I did a 5-port. You can do fewer if you you don't need that many HDMI inputs. But it's nice because it's easily switchable and you can do it with just this one little remote. So what am I doing there? So you got 5 HDMI inputs, including our old school console, and they're coming out with one output, one HDMI output. And we could stop there, right? But we're not going to. We're going to split the signal with an HDMI splitter here. This is a powered one. And what it's doing is it's taking that one input, it's duplicating the output. Okay? And you'll understand why very quickly. One of those is going to go into our capture card. Okay, it's going to go into the input of the Elgato, and that is what the software is capturing. What you're seeing on this stream, it's what the software is capturing, is that input. But we're also going to do something else. We're going to take the other signal. We want to send it directly to a monitor, right? That way we can just play it in real time. We're not playing it through the software where it has to be processed. We're not trying to do a pass through on the card where it could introduce input lag. We don't want any of that. We want to have it display on a monitor just like what we would if we were trying to play it on a TV, right? But I'm not going to dedicate this monitor to just playing consoles. I want to use it as my desktop when I'm not playing those games, right? So we're going to use a simple HDMI switch. So it's got, one is coming from my video card, the other one is coming from our splitter, and I can swap between. So I can make this either part of my desktop or I can make it a monitor for my consoles. And I can choose it just that easy, press of a button. So that way I've got a monitor where I can play the game and I can play it in as close to real time as possible. But I'm also capturing and being able to stream at the same time. And I can do that from any console, all the way from the Atari 2600 to the PS4. All those different steps of the way. It may be a little expensive to set it all up when you add it all up, but when you're talking about the splitter and you're talking about the upscaler and you're talking about this converter and you're talking about your VCR, you might be looking at a little bit of money to get everything set up. But once it's set up, it's done. And then you've got access to an entire library of games from Atari 2600, NES, TurboGrafx. You know, you could work a Genesis in there. PS1, 2, 3, and 4, Xbox, Xbox 360, Xbox One. You can do every console this way. Obviously, if you don't have an interest in Atari 2600, you know, you can skip the step with the VCR and the converter. You know, if you're not interested in a game that, you know, in one of these games with the RCA outputs, you're just interested in HDMI, you can still do HDMI consoles the same way, where you're splitting it between the capture card versus a monitor so that you can still see it in real time. I know it's definitely made the experience for me. This is something I've had to learn by doing it, and I've made a lot of mistakes along the way. I may not even be doing it the best way either. So if you see something I'm doing wrong, something I can do more easily, let me know in the comments. You know, let's compare notes on this thing. But in the meantime, you know, I love the fact that between a switcher box and a remote, I can go through every console generation and I can play games on them all. And that's all on the original hardware, no emulation. The closest I get to emulation is if I want to play one of these mini consoles. And I'll be honest, the only time I'm playing those is if it's a game that's too expensive for me to get as an actual cartridge. So there you go, folks. I hope you enjoyed this this video. I hope you found the content educational. If it helps you in being able to set up your own consoles and your own streams, I think that's great. But if you have questions or comments, go ahead and leave them here. If you want to get in touch with me, you can also reach me on Twitter. I am at KGB313_Twitch. Or, of course, you could find me on Twitch. Twitch.tv/KGB313. We do a retro stream every Friday. We also do, you know, different types of games like the Dark Souls and Bloodborne games, or we've done a lot of Blizzard games in the past, things like Overwatch and Diablo. So yeah, I hope you found this content entertaining and educational. If it helped you in some way, I think that's fantastic. And if you enjoyed this video, hit the like and subscribe, and check us out next time. Thanks.